Borthakur IAS Academy. Prostuti aru adhyayanor nirbhorjogyo thikona. Borthakur IAS Academy.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Hindu analysis for 28th June 2021. Let us begin with the first article today. Suspected drone attack on IAF Jammu station leaves 2 injured. Now, for the first time, terrorists in Jammu and Kashmir, or a matter of fact anywhere in India, have used drones to attack military installations or strategic targets. Now, this is a departure from their regular standard operating procedure. Earlier, they used to either drive up to security agencies, shoot at them or fire at them or throw grenades at them. In Pulwama, we saw that a human suicide bomber rammed a car into security agency's vehicle, killing 40 of our own soldiers. So that has been the pretty much guide for their attacks. They either used to fire indiscriminately, or that they used to carry out explosions, or they used to carry out grenade attacks. Now, for the first time in a change of tactics, adopting new technologies to carry out terrorist attacks, terrorists in Jammu and Kashmir, particularly in Jammu, had used drones to detonate 2 low-intensity explosions or explosives in IAF Air Force Station in Jammu. Now, as far as this, both Jammu and Kashmir police and have called it a terror attack. They have registered an FIR under UAPA. NIA teams have visited the site and are carrying out an investigation as to what is the initial impact here. Because security agencies are suspecting that drones, or particularly a type of drone called quadcopter, has been used in this attack, and this is a cause of concern for Indian security establishment. Right, drones are undetectable on radar. This causes a lot of issues to secure strategic assets in India. So earlier, as I said earlier, this was not done before. This is the first time that they have used to greater extent successfully, because they were able to reach inside the Air Force Station itself to carry out the attack. So things are going to get a little bit different from now on. We have to observe and wait how this is going to translate into mass adoption or whatever that we have to see. But nonetheless, in a first, terrorists used drones to attack military installations. So moving on to the next article, Rajnath reaches Ladakh to review ground situation. So Defense Minister had reached Ladakh to conduct a review of the ground situation and our troop employment. Now remember, this is not a one-day visit. This is kind of a visit that carries a lot of significance in terms of what is the intent of Government of India in Ladakh area. Now, according to officials, the minister will carry out comprehensive review of India's operational readiness, in particular Eastern Ladakh, as there is a current stalemate between India and China. Yesterday, on Saturday, we studied that India and China have agreed for a 12th round of commander level talks. And his visit at this point of time gains a lot of significance, because we know how China has been back and forth with the disengagement and de-engagement issues. Right now, they have occupied our territories in Depsang area, Hot Springs area, Gogra area, and also in Pangong Lake area, where they are denying, or where we had an agreement with them stating that until the entire issue is resolved to April 2020 status quo, pre-ante status quo, we are not going to conduct any more patrolling. And we are seeing how they are flaring up issues in Bhutan, and they are flaring up issues in Arunachal Pradesh also. So this particular visit at this point of time indicates a lot of significance, because given the current situation. So nothing to report here, but nonetheless, his visit, that to a 3-day visit to Ladakh at this point of time, gains a significance. We have to see what policy reorientation might happen after return of defense minister from Ladakh area. That would be one of the things that we have to wait. So moving on to the next article, resurgence of pandemic speculative for now according to government. Now government, particularly the Union Health Ministry, told Supreme Court that the possibility of resurgence in COVID-19 infection is just speculative and will depend on behavior of citizens and the virus. In their reply to the Supreme Court, the Union Health Ministry said that whatever the reports that we are seeing that a third wave might come, or we are going to see a similar caseload in third wave like we have seen in the second wave, is purely speculative, because it is entirely dependent on the behavior of the population and the behavior of the virus. The behavior of the virus in this regards is the mutative aspect of it. We know that how dangerous the Delta variant was. Now we know that there is a variant that is his brother, that is Delta plus variant, that is AY1 and AY2. Delta variant has two strains in it, that is AY1 variant strain and AY2 strain. So it mutated furthermore into a next variant. So since Delta variant or the Delta plus variant have been noticed by both health agencies and health experts all around the world, stating that whatever we saw in the Delta variant, it is going to be only multiplied or doubled by the Delta plus variant, which is causing a lot of panic in general public and in policymakers also. Because remember, one of the things that we faced in the Delta variant during the second wave was the shortage of medicine, shortage of whatever the health and medical infrastructure that we needed. We didn't even recover from that onslaught of second wave till now. And it would take a lot of time for us to recover from that second wave. Imagine if a third wave of the same intensity befalls India. So it becomes it kind of becomes an issue where nobody is prepared to deal with third wave. But according to recent studies, like on Saturday we saw how the London College and ICMR conducted a study or made a modeling simulation with multiple variants playing and multiple scenarios being studied extensively, and that study conclusively said that the third wave or the intensity of the third wave is not going to be as such as the second wave. But at the end of the day, the only solution that everybody, every study, every organization, every institution in the world seems to be saying one thing: get your population vaccinated. Until and unless you reach a percentage of vaccination levels in your population that is that equals herd immunity percentage, that is 70 to 80% of the population should have been vaccinated by now, or should be vaccinated by the end of this year. So until and unless that percentages or that number of vaccines are administered to people, the threat of waves is going to be hanging over our heads. So nonetheless, two things to remember here. One, we have a new variant called Delta plus variant, that is AY1 and AY2. Studies do indicate that vaccination is the only way out of it. Indian vaccination rates, though high, but less, because we are able to administer only single doses to people. The percentage of people getting administered single dose is high compared to people receiving their second dose. We need active coverage and complete coverage of citizens. So that's the issue here. But nonetheless, governments are preparing for the third wave. We don't have any concrete policy as far from the central government indicating what should be the procedures to be set in place to prepare for third wave. But nonetheless, our vaccinations are picking up. Governments are aware of a third wave. It is no longer that we weren't made aware of the imminent arrival of a third wave or nothing like that. Everybody is pretty much aware that India will experience a third wave. It's just a matter of time, and it's just a matter of when. So again, at this point of time, the government seems to have a stance or adopted a stance stating that the possibility of resurgence or increase in caseload or uptick in total positivity rates is purely speculative and is entirely dependent on the virus and the behavior of the people. You know what involves the behavior of people. We are not going to go there. But from what I am seeing, people are lax with their protocols. They are not properly wearing their masks. People are not following social distancing rules or not, whatever. But again, one aspect of fight against COVID is vaccination. The second aspect is people behavior. So moving on to the next article. For Mizoram students, it's a struggle to catch the tower and log on. So this has been an issue since COVID-19 pandemic. The digital divide that we are seeing in India is abyssal. It's actually very sad to see the digital divide unfolding in front of us because one of the biggest victims of this pandemic is children's education, and the reason that they have become a victim of this pandemic is because of the digital divide that exists in India, particularly in rural India and northeastern states. So in the beginning of the pandemic, when I was teaching a class in Arunachal Pradesh for 10th and 12th class students, I saw how they were struggling to access internet. We had to have a special meeting with the collector of that district, who was helping us, by the way. He was not even, he was engaging with us proactively. He was so helpful to us that he had to communicate with the cell companies or the network providers and ask them to boost the towers so that people in remote areas and the people in remote villages could have internet signals. So from personal experience, I personally know how students are suffering because of lack of connectivity, particularly in northeastern states. I had to teach a class for 3 months and I saw how students struggled every day to log into classes. So you have to understand from a perspective of answer writing that this article is important, right? You have to give an example as to what was one of the issues that students had faced during the pandemic. This is a good answer. Due to digital divide and due to lack of connectivity, due to lack of access to smartphones or laptops, smartphones with 2G or 3G connectivity has become hard in these regions. So this is a case of students, particularly a set of students in Mizoram, who had to not only attend online classes but also sit for exams. So we have to understand what are the woes of students in this particular time period and ensure this might not get repeated in the future. So from that perspective, answer writing perspective, this becomes a good anecdote to write in your exams. So moving on to the next article, on the margins with full equality still out of reach. So this article particularly, or this editorial, talks about the rights of LGBTQ community, particularly LGBTQ plus community, because it's no longer lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer. You have other group of individuals who have their own identities to contend with. Now, when you talk about India and equal rights in terms of LGBT community, there is a bit of discrepancy in society. And there is a discrepancy between judiciary and legislative. So you have one section of the society. What do I mean by that? See, in one section of the society is acceptable of these people. There is another set of society or a section of society that is not okay with these people. Meaning they are not accepting or such, or they have their own reservations because of whatever their belief system is or whatever they do. Like how the society had two sides, right? Where one aspect of the society is accepting of LGBTQ communities, and one section of the society, like anywhere you go, any country you visit, there are two groups that are divided on the topic of LGBTQ plus community. Even in America, there is a group that is very accepting and welcoming of the LGBTQ plus community. There is a very big group in America itself, the progressive nation as it identifies, where LGBTQ plus people are discriminated. So let us come back to India. The divide that author of this article talks about, the divide between legislative and judiciary. When it comes to the idea of equality for equal rights for LGBTQ plus community in India, judiciary of India is far ahead compared to its partner, the legislature. Right? One of the landmark rulings in terms of equal rights for LGBT community, or in terms of in terms of decriminalizing homosexuality, that is section 377 of IPC, which was struck down by Supreme Court of India in Navtej Singh Johar and others versus Union of India case 2018. See, this is an important case. You have to write it in answers. For mains answer writing, you have to know the name of the case. In Supreme Court in 2018, particularly in the case of Navtej Singh Johar and others versus Union of India, the Supreme Court observed that the application of section 377 of the Indian Penal Code to consensual homosexual behavior between adults was unconstitutional, irrational, indefensible and manifestly arbitrary. We have nothing like that from the legislative side, right? Whatever the recognition that LGBT community has received was from the judiciary and not from the legislative. Pre-2018 Navtej Singh Johar and Union of India case, there was another verdict in Nas Foundation versus Government of NCT of Delhi in 2009, where the Delhi High Court observed that in law of sexuality or 38th parallel in law of sexuality and equality jurisprudence in India, where the court held that similarly like how Supreme Court observed or held the section 377, the court held that section 377 offended the guarantee of equality enshrined in Article 14 of the Constitution because it creates an unreasonable classification and targets homosexuals as a class. So again, what happened in 2013, the Supreme Court reinstated 377 after this 2009 judgment, but finally in 2018, the Supreme Court came out and said that section 377 of Indian Penal Code is simply unconstitutional and irrational. So they struck it down. So that was a momentous occasion in terms of LGBTQ plus recognition and rights recognition in India. Post that, much hasn't changed in terms of both judiciary or legislatively, right? The article particularly talks about this, becomes an important answer for both ethics and polity, because it talks about rights of individuals and it talks about the morality aspect of it also. So it becomes an important topic and an editorial for two subjects. One is ethics and one is polity. So coming back to the article itself, since then there has been certain challenges posed to LGBTQ plus community in India, because there is a lot of discrimination still happening against these sexual minorities in India. Recently, a few people approached courts for legal sanction to same-sex marriage. But the Union of India or the government, the central government, has opposed any move to sanction or accord legal safeguards or legal acceptance to same-sex marriages in India. Their rationale was that, okay, section 377 was decriminalized from the Indian Penal Code, but that doesn't mean that, or that does not automatically translate into a fundamental right for same-sex couples to marry. So that matter is still in the courts, and the government has clearly said that, okay, we understand and accept that the section 377 is of Indian Penal Code has been decriminalized, but that doesn't mean that we are going to be accepting or give legal sanction to same-sex couples to marry. The author gives an example of the US Supreme Court, where in 2015, in 𝐎𝐫𝐠 case, the judge underscored, or the Supreme Court of United States underscored, the emotional and social value of institution of marriage and asserted that the universal human right of marriage should not be denied to a same-sex couple. That was in 2015, and that too in United States. What is the global situation as far as this thing is concerned, as far as same-sex recognition, same-sex marriage recognition in the world? Apart from US and including US, right? As of 2021, same-sex marriage is legally performed and recognized in 29 countries, and India is not one of them. Right? India's constitution is one of the most progressive, one of the most liberal constitutions in the world. It is so progressive that it doesn't have any discrimination aspects in it, right? When you compare to the constitutions of other countries, there are a lot of discriminatory aspects that they had to contend with. Our constitution came at a point in our historical time that we had gone through that kinds of colonization and whatnot, and through the hands of the British and many others. So our constitution, our framing committee or the drafting committee of our constitution thought in progressive and liberal terms, and that is why we have one of the most forward-thinking and equity-based constitutions in the world. There are certain challenges when it is being implemented, but nonetheless, when you look at the text of the Constitution of India, it is most liberal and forward-thinking, forward-based constitution. Now, let us see what Indian Constitution says about it. We have Article 15 in our Constitution stating that Article 15 secures the citizen from every sort of discrimination by the states. It can be on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth, or any of them. And this article is the cornerstone of, or the concept or the idea of equality in our country, and it is antithesis of discrimination. It goes opposite of discrimination, what these communities are facing in India. See, though Section 377 has been decriminalized, there are a lot of people in India who face discrimination on a day-to-day basis because of their sexual preferences. Let's not even go to the concept of same-sex marriage. Let's stay at the concept of them not being discriminated on a day-to-day basis just because of their different sexual preferences. See, LGBTQ plus community in still India has, though made certain strides in being recognized, they do still face an uphill task. Though we have certain safeguards in legislation in terms of safeguarding or securing transgender people, there is a problem of stigma in society right now. Right? Even though the government officially recognizes transgender people, hell, the government is even accommodating these people in giving them identification certificates, but there is still a lot of discrimination faced by the transgender community, whom the other LGBT groups consider to be more advantageous compared to them. Even those people who have been fighting for their equal representation rights or whatnot, though they have certain representations in certain parts of the country and almost all safeguards, they too still face a lot of discrimination. Just think about what would be the case with other minorities or sexual minorities who would have different sexual identities or preferences as such. So, first, to conclude whatever we are discussing here, our constitution is progressive and extends almost all equal rights to everybody irrespective of their differences, right? Differences in identities. In India, judiciary is far more ahead of recognition of LGBTQ plus community concerns than the legislature. India does not allow for same-sex couples to marry. There is a very hard path for these people to even adopt kids. Forget about marriage. If they want to adopt somebody, I don't think they can adopt anybody. On a day-to-day basis, LGBTQ plus community does face a lot of stigma, does a lot of discrimination against them on a day-to-day basis. Even in their works, even in their workspace, even in their homes, even in their societies where they live. So, no matter how many, let us look at the transgender. As I said, there are certain legal safeguards for their identity, but the idea of stigma, right? That stigma concept still wreaks havoc on these people's life. So while you're talking about granting legal rights to these people, you have to also tackle the stigma aspect of this issue in society. Right? Even in the Navtej Singh Johar and others case, Justice Nariman clearly said that the government should sensitize the general public and officials, including police officers, to reduce the finally eliminating stigma associated with LGBTQ plus community in India. Right? That you see a clear divide in society. Right? So there are a lot of issues, and stigma is the only way, addressing the stigma is the only way out of this situation that we are in right now. See, even if the stigma aspect is, if stigma aspect is taken away from the society, or at least a greater percentage of stigma is taken away from the society in terms of LGBTQ plus community recognition and acceptance, they wouldn't even care about the legal aspect of it, because since society is so supportive of them, they don't even have to worry about the legislative aspect of it. Look at the community of transgenders. They have the legal aspects of it. They have certain protections granted to them under legislature, but because of stigma, the legal protections are not being transferred to these people in real life. I may be exaggerating here, but nonetheless, that is one issue that you have to understand. See, stigma is the core issue in this entire discourse. Now, as far as the schools and university students to be sensitized about the diversity of sexuality and to deconstruct the myth of heteronormativity, that's an issue that is a landmine. Because not every parent is going to be accepting the idea that the school which his or her son studies or daughter studies teaches their kid about heteronormativity or diversity of sexuality or what is homophobia. Yes, you have to teach them, but the problem comes down to, will the parents be acceptive or receptive of such initiatives by the schools themselves or the government themselves? First, this entire discourse is laden with sensitivities. You know what those sensitivities are. I don't have to go in detail. The second thing is, the biggest hurdle in terms of recognizing the LGBTQ community or the plus community is the stigma that is associated with it. So, the entire discourse itself is so twisted right now. Despite the judiciary coming out on supporting the rights of these people, there is a lot of discrimination that happens because of sensitivity, stigma, lack of understanding, or whatever you call it. So it is high time for us to ensure that discrimination does not happen on any level of the society. So the legislature has also to catch up to these rights of these people. They have to at least give some sort of respite to these people through legislation. So that's the article that we talk about in this editorial. To repeat again, this is an important answer for both ethics standpoint of view and also polity. The important judgment that you have to remember and quote in answer writing is the Navtej Singh Johar and others versus Union of India 2018 judgment. Moving on to the next article, drones are now a favored terror tool. Before getting into that article, weaponization of drones was first used in Iraq by the Islamic State and in Syria. In 2016, the coalition forces that were fighting Islamic State in Iraq and Syria saw the first usage of drones dropping bombs or drones themselves ramming into vehicles or exploding on security forces. This was the first time that we saw weaponization of small drones by terrorists. Now, what is the situation in India? We know that in the first article we studied that a drone attack took place in Jammu and Kashmir, that too particularly a security installation. And in the history of India or modern history, this is the first time that drones have been used by terrorists to carry out attacks. So that is an entire shift in the fight against terrorism, and it is going to cause a lot of issues and challenges to our security forces to secure our assets. Now coming back to this, according to, see, the idea till this point of time was, even yesterday or Saturday when the Chief of Army was talking about it, he was saying that Pakistan has been using, or terrorists supported by Pakistan have been using drones to drop ammunition, fake currency, drugs into Indian territory. There are certain instances in the past, in the recent past, where police, Punjab police, Jammu and Kashmir police, border security force in certain areas, certain borders of Jammu and Kashmir have either shot down or arrested people collecting drone drops of ammunition, ammunition, grenades, drugs, fake currency or whatnot. And the instances have increased to great heights post February ceasefire agreement. See, the army general was observing that yes, there is peace in Jammu and Kashmir or the border area with Pakistan, but simultaneously we are seeing an increased activity in terms of drone drops from Pakistani side. They may not be firing bullets or shelling us right now, but they have increased delivery of arms, ammunition, drugs and counterfeit currency using drones. So according to government figures, official government figures, the numbers may be actually higher than what we know right now. In 2019 alone, 167 drones were sighted by security agencies, 77 in 2020, and we don't know what the number is in 2021. We know for a fact that for the past 2 years, drones have been deployed regularly by Pakistan and Pakistan-based outfits to smuggle arms, ammunition and drugs into Indian territory. But the dropping of explosive device from the drones in technical area of the Air Force station in Jammu and Kashmir that resulted in blasts, low intensity blasts at the early hours of Sunday was the first time that drones were being deployed for terror activities or for explosion. They used it for carrying out a terror attack. Now, this is an emerging challenge for security agencies to counter, right? With the increasing use of improvised explosive devices, particularly on Sunday, Jammu and Kashmir police found and retrieved another 5 kg drone or a device that had explosives attached to it. So this is not a one and done case. So as I said earlier, there were earlier cases of drones dropping guns, counterfeit currency that were shot down or intercepted by security agencies. In certain cases, BSF was able to arrest or apprehend people who went to collect those ammunition drops or ammunition dumps that were being done through drones. The biggest challenge is they are undetectable because of their small size. Are there any counter solutions? Yes. Are they effective? To little extent and greater extent in certain cases. Has India been equipping our armed forces or security agencies with counter drone measures? The answer is no. Though certain installations have anti-drone measures and anti-drone equipment, they haven't been widely adopted by our security agencies. So this attack will for sure change that stance in terms of adopting countermeasures for weaponized drones. So this is a shift in policy in terms of Indian establishment countering weaponized drones and also terrorist agencies or terrorist actors adopting drones for carrying out attacks in India. So moving on to the next article, ED transfer of defaulters' assets to PSB. So this is an article from Sunday's newspaper. But one of the interesting things that I found in this article is the systematic problem in Indian banking sector. Why does Indian banks have to go through this vicious cycle of bad loans or giving out bad loans to entities who end up defaulting on those loans? And their defaulting of that loan or that amount has caused a direct havoc on Indian banking system. So this particular article though has other issues, but this idea that this is a systematic problem in Indian banking sector is a good understanding or a good concept to know about. So what is the systematic problem that Indian banks have? So before going into that, the seizure and liquidation of assets may help in paying back a significant share of the liabilities that these fugitives own to banks, but that is not the end-all solution to the issue. As far as the extradition aspect of these people from the countries that they have fled to, there are a lot of restrictions and a lot of issues that India has to jump through before bringing them back to our country and putting them up for trial. Because remember, they are not only being charged for defaulting on bank loans, they have also violated a lot of financial laws under Indian jurisdiction. That means that whatever the cases that we are fighting in other countries to extradite these people, they are not solely based on the defaulting aspect of it, because they violated actual laws in India. But it will take a lot of time for India to get back these people or extradited these people back to India. We know how challenging it has been to get Nirav Modi and Vijay Mallya from UK. We know where they are, our security agencies know what they are doing, but we have to follow the international norms, and the UK government, though has been helpful to us, is refusing to divulge one area where they are still concerned about extraditing Vijay Mallya to India. So that's the situation here. What are the systematic issues that Indian bankings face when these kinds of things happen? No matter how much amount is retrieved, that is not enough to address the root problem of banking scams in India. It is a systemic problem. It happens day in, day out, again and again and again and again, irrespective of how many examples we have pointing to otherwise and having hard evidence that the banking system itself has own issues. And unless they resolve those issues or the government forces them to resolve these issues, we are going to see banking scams in India happening year in, year out. The first thing that banking systems have as a systematic problem is the loans given by public sector banks to powerful industrialists are often influenced by crony non-business considerations. Look at the case of ICICI Bank. The chairman of ICICI Bank gave out a loan to a company which was funding or diverting certain amount of that money to the bank's chairman's husband's company. So she, through using her authority in the bank, issued a loan to a company which then, as a payback or a kickback to that loan, diverted some of that money to her husband's company. So bribery. So the loan in this instance was not given or was not granted based on the requirements or the assets or the security or the name of the person who is availing loan. It was granted on the basis that the chairman of the bank is going to get certain kickback from the company. So Indian banking sectors, both public and private, are not influenced by business matters. They are influenced by non-business considerations. As far as now, there is very little oversight of the purposes of which these loans were put to use. Once the loan is given, the bank doesn't track where the money is going. Neither the government tracks where the money is going. And whatever loans that were given to this point, these loans to corporations constituted almost three-fourths of the total bad loans in the banking system. That's the majority of bad loans that are given out to these corporations that they defaulted in. Addressing the problem of this crony lending will require deep structural changes in the banking sector, which are not in the horizon. Nobody is talking about structural reforms in the banking sector. So whatever the government is doing right now, whatever the banks are doing right now, are actually strengthening these crony structures in banking sector. They are not addressing the issues here. Now the solution at this point of time is the structural reforms against this. The crony lending or non-business considerations has to begin. That is the only way to stop this bad loan problem in Indian banking sector. But as I said earlier, these things are hard to come by because there are certain groups in India that operate on this modus operandi. So they'll put a huge pushback against any reforms that threatens their existence. Moving on to the next article, the power of an apology. So we have recently two instances of two countries apologizing for their actions in the past in different parts of the world. The first example is in May. We discussed both of these instances in the past from the perspective of map pointing. Again, this is important in terms of map pointing, but this editorial is important in the sense of answer writing for ethics. Why apologizing for your past mistakes is important. Even countries apologizing is not a signal of weakness, but is a signal of strength and confidence and determination. So you have to take this article or editorial from that perspective. So to repeat, it goes for a good answer for ethics. So coming back to the article, in May, Germany officially apologized to Namibia for the massacre of Herero and Nama people in 1904 and 1908 and called it a genocide for the first time. So what happened in Namibia was that the German government officially apologized for it and recognized it as a genocide of the Herero and Nama people, and the government said that we are going to pay reparations of 1.3 billion or 1.4 billion dollars in Namibia. We are going to invest that money for the development of these tribal people in Namibia. So what happened in Namibia was like how how British colonized India, Germany also colonized Namibia. And the tribal people of Herero and Nama put up a resistance to the German invasion or German occupation of their territory. So what Germany did, like how British rounded up and sent Indians to starve and die, similarly German troops also rounded all these people up into a group and sent them into desert of the Namibian desert. Now what happened was, when these people, the Herero and the Nama people, were sent to desert, they died because of hunger and thirst. Only few people were able to survive this massacre. Right? That's the backstory to this. That's the actual thing that happened. Germany tried to colonize these people. They put up a resistance. They fought. The German troops killed them indiscriminately, and whoever survived, they sent them into the desert to die. Only few survived. For their actions, Germany has officially apologized to these tribes people and said that we are going to invest 1.4 billion for your overall development. Similarly, French President Emmanuel Macron again apologized for their country's role in Rwandan genocide and has hoped for forgiveness. So what happened in Rwanda? In 1994, there was a civil war that broke out between Hutu tribesmen and Tutsi tribesmen in Rwanda. Tribesmen is a wrong word. Two groups, Hutu group and Tutsi group. In 1994, Hutu group was in power and they initiated a massacre against the Tutsi people of Rwanda. So when this massacre and onslaught from the Hutu people was going on against the Tutsi people in 1994, major world powers remained silent. But French chose to support the Hutu people. When Hutu people were massacring Tutsi people, the French government decided to side with the Hutu government or Hutu people in power. Later on, the Tutsi people came to power and then the genocide stopped. But no other country came in and prevented that massacre or genocide from happening. So for their role of supporting the Hutu people in Rwanda, the French president officially asked for forgiveness and has apologized and recognized the country's role in Rwandan genocide. So what is the implication, or what are the implications of these kinds of apologies that countries are making right now? So you have two coins of this side of apology story. One is countries like Germany, France apologizing for their past actions and trying to pay reparations or trying to contend with the effects of that or recognize their actions. And you have the other countries like Turkey, where they have been denying Armenian genocide that happened during World War I, when Ottoman Empire slaughtered Armenians, millions of them. To this day, the Turkey government officially denies Armenian genocide. The strongman of Turkey, Erdogan, went as far as condemning the recognition of the genocide by the Joe Biden administration. American president, he said that for the first time, American president agreed that the Armenian genocide was true and we have to recognize Armenian genocide. And when that statement came from the Joe Biden presidency, Turkey president went on at Turkey. So there is an ample evidence that 1.5 million or at least 1.5 million Armenians were killed by the Ottoman Empire during World War I, and it is indeed a genocide. We have enough evidence to say that. In 2018, again, Justin Trudeau apologized for his country's role in turning away a ship carrying 900 Jewish people who were refusing prosecution from the Nazi Germany. Nazis, they were killing Jews. So 900 people who were able to save their lives and run from Nazi prosecution came to Canada in a ship, which the government of Canada turned them away, stating that they cannot state these people protection. Again in 2016, Trudeau apologized before the descendants of the passengers of Komagata Maru ship. This ship was significant to India or attached to India because in 1914, a ship called Komagata Maru, carrying South Asian migrants, predominantly Sikhs, in 1914 came to the shores of Canada asking for refuge. The Canadian government during that period decided to turn away the ship carrying these people. And when these Sikhs who were running away or fleeing from the persecution of British government in India, when the ship returned to India, the British carried out an offensive action against them, shooting most of these people in the ship. So whatever the issues that we are talking about here is a complex issue. It is very difficult to find a mutually acceptable compromise, because in the case of Germany, the Hiroro and Nama people, though the government of Namibia accepted their assistance and accepted their apologies, certain sections of the Hiroro and Nama people who are descendants of that genocide are not happy with the reparations that Germany is giving. They are saying that instead of giving 1.4 billion to developmental money, pay directly to the descendants of the genocide, survivors of the genocide. So it's a complex issue and it is very hard to find a mutually acceptable compromise or a solution in these kinds of situations. What is the price of money on a life? Again, that question comes to mind. But what is the end result of such apologies on bilateral issues? There are multiple positive effects of such actions by governments. One, they'll strengthen the bilateral relationship between countries. Such apologies from leaders of countries can and indeed help people reconcile with the past. Countries and communities can take lessons from the past and avoid similar tragedies happening in the future. What happened during Jewish persecution by the Nazis? The same thing is happening to Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang province of China. Is anybody talking about the persecution of Uyghurs in China? The countries that don't matter are talking. The countries that matter are not even speaking a word. So you have to take them to greater level. You have to know your past. You have to accept your past, and you have to ensure that same things do not repeat in the future. So this is the importance of such apologies, because they require courage, goodwill, compassion and humility. And trust me, it is not easy to ask or apologize for something, let alone a country asking for apologies for their past actions that happened centuries ago. On a moral level, this increases the depth of contemporary geopolitics. It adds a new dimension to the idea of geopolitics. In a multipolar world where dictatorship, military power, military might, financial might are alone carrying forward, instances such as let us bring back the sense of the core concept of geopolitics, that is humans supporting humans, comes into foreplay. Look at China. China is everly increasing in its capacity. It is financially powerful, its military might, its financial capabilities, its manufacturing capabilities, they are all good. What about the humility aspect of it? What about the human aspect of it? China doesn't have anything like that. And that doesn't fare well for China in future. Do you think China is going to be stronger for indefinite period of time? There is going to be a time in history of China where it is going to fall, or where its power is going to wane away. During that time, people don't tend to remember their strength, their military might, their financial strength. People tend to remember their goodwill. So, this concept of humility, apologizing, compassion do tend to increase the overall development of society as a whole, and this is not an easy issue. So as far as this article, it's good for both ethics in answer writing. Moving on to the next article, nuclear site images won't be shared with IAEA Iran. Now, since the deal has expired with IAEA and negotiations are not going to happen because of various reasons, you know, the Iran nuclear deal is still up in the air because Tehran is sticking to its guns, stating that until America lifts away the restrictions that were imposed or sanctions imposed by Donald Trump presidency, we are not going to negotiate or re-engage with P5+1 regarding the Iran nuclear deal. In that regard, the Iranian government said that Iran is not going to hand over images from inside of some of Iranian nuclear sites to the IAEA agency, which is a UN nuclear watchdog. They are saying that since the agreement has expired, any information regarding or recorded regarding the nuclear activity will never be given to the International Atomic Energy Agency. And this is a significant step because this decision from the Iranian government is sure to escalate already complicated situation with the Iran nuclear program and the world powers. We have to wait what it is going to lead to. Thank you. Stay safe. Namaste.
Borthakur IAS Academy. প্রস্তুতি আৰু অধ্যয়নৰ নিৰ্ভৰযোগ্য ঠিকনা। Borthakur IAS Academy.